All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the August M5 Mastermind session. If you've been living under a rock the past, 7, 8 months, we've been going live every single month in this Facebook community on various topics that you guys find interesting, that are very educational, are going to help you along your health and wellness journey. If you have missed any of the previous ones since January, they are all on YouTube and here in the Facebook group. Let me know if you're looking for something specific, and I'll be sure to get you tagged in it. And we haven't yet announced the September Mastermind session. That'll be in another week or two. But right now we're here focusing on August with Megan Abbott. She's going to be talking all about mastering your energy and conquering your trauma. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to her, and then I'm going to have her take it away. She has a ton of great information for us, and I am so excited. Make sure you have some water, make sure you have something to take notes with, and we will dive in. So Megan is a nutritional therapy practitioner. She has a ton of certifications, including functional blood chemistry specialist, certified personal trainer, energy healer, which is like Reiki, level 2. I have no idea what that means, but I know it's better than level 1. She specializes in working with people with chronic illnesses, unexplained chronic issues, and tries to find the root of the issue, go to the root cause and address that in a holistic manner, looking specifically at nutrition, the nervous system, movement, and lifestyle. I know there's so much more to her and her story, so I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, turn it over to her, and we are going to learn. Go ahead, Megan, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I love being able to share all this kind of stuff with people because it's so important. It's such a juicy topic. So thank you for having me. So my name's Megan. I have all of the certifications, but really how I got here, which is more important, I think, than what most people care about, is so I grew up in Pittsburgh. I grew up with a single mom who was an alcoholic. So I had a lot of childhood trauma growing up, a lot of mental health issues growing up, spent a lot of time in talk therapy on medication for many, many years, starting from a pretty young age. And it wasn't until I got to close to my mid-20s that I found exercise and strength training and nutrition and used that as a tool to get off all my medication and stay in a good spot or good enough spot at that time, and fell in love with it, which is how I originally got into the health and wellness space here, and started doing personal training and did gym management, and I managed other personal training companies, and all that kind of stuff, and loved it. But a few years after I originally got into the fitness world, I was in a car accident, that very minor car accident, but it triggered a lot of issues. It triggered chronic back pain, hip pain, all kinds of gut issues, chronic fatigue, inflammation, unexplained weight gain, hair loss, all kinds of symptoms that I spent years in the Western medicine world trying to figure out, and then years in the holistic functional medicine space trying to figure out. And just wasn't getting a lot of answers. I spent a ton of time, a ton of money on all kinds of functional medicine testing, on all kinds of supplements, and I just wasn't getting much better, and I wasn't getting better enough. And so that's kind of, I started my own education to try and figure this out myself and trying to heal myself. And that's kind of when I went down the root cause field and route, and figured out I had heavy metal toxicity, chronic Epstein-Barr virus, that had triggered an autoimmune disease in my thyroid, all kinds of gut overgrowth issues. I had chronic SIBO and intestinal permeability, or leaky gut. I had adrenal fatigue. I had a lot of cortisol dysregulation issues. I had parasite overgrowth, and that was leading to systemic inflammation and all kinds of things. And once I kind of got that piece, I was feeling so much better, but there was still I still knew I could feel better. And that's really when I started down the trauma work, rabbit hole here. And I tried a ton of things from trauma therapy, hypnosis, energy work. I've now done some other things as well. And just to like figure something else that I could feel better with. And this really kind of has been the tool and the biggest kind of piece of my puzzle to feel great, feel happier than I've ever felt, feel more energy, to sleep better, have better gut health and cognitive health than I've ever had, and also stay healed. At this point, I've also completely reversed my autoimmunity. I've had no signs or symptoms in my blood work or just physical symptoms for years now, which is why I'm so passionate about this work and such a big believer in all this kind of work.
Gotta find the unmute button. That's amazing. You mentioned energy healing. When I hear energy healing, I envision, somebody standing over a broken leg and being like, and boom, that leg is healed. I know that's not what you're talking about. So tell us a little bit more. What is energy healing? What's the science behind it?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. No, I'm just kidding. But a little bit, yeah. So energy healing is really based in the world of quantum physics. And if we think about quantum physics, everything is an atom, and all atoms are vibrating at a certain frequency. We know atoms are moving, which means that they have a certain vibration and a certain frequency. And what energy healing looks to do, very similar to acupuncture, more people are familiar with acupuncture, which is why I like to make this comparison, is it really works to remove blockages, and some of that can be mental, emotional, and or physical, to help the body vibrate at a higher frequency, and a frequency of healing, of optimal health, of happiness. And the body's really, in our belief that we believe the body can heal itself given the right circumstance. And the goal for energy healing is really supporting the mental, emotional, and physical body in a different way to increase that natural vibration to one of more optimal, so that the body can heal itself and stay that way.
Right. So is this just for those that, when I think of high vibrations and practicing and healing, I think of like yoga, but it's not just for yogis, it's for anybody and everybody?
Anybody and everybody. Yeah. I'm going to kind of tell a little bit more about the energy healing in my story. And I think that'll help explain it a little bit more and who it's for and how it can help. So, I've worked with many different types of energy practitioners. I got certified in Reiki level 1 and level 2 as a starting point for my own work in the energy healing world. And that's a pretty common. A lot of energy healers end up getting a certification in Reiki and get anointed with the energy of Reiki, which is really just a specific type of energy that is used to help people heal and increase this vibration and frequency to one of more optimal healing. But the way I kind of started using energy healing and started working with people, which is very much in how I work with people now, is working through and finding a lot of the trauma patterns that were coming up, emotional blockages, emotions that you were holding on to. For me personally, it's not a big surprise, knowing what I know now, that I had a lot of liver dysfunction, chronic viral issues, gut overgrowth issues, toxin overload issues, adrenal issues, hormone imbalances. A lot of that has to do with the liver. And for me, my mom was an alcoholic, had a lot of liver issues. That can be passed on from a generational trauma perspective, but also I was holding on to a lot of anger and resentment. Anger and resentment are often held in the liver when we look at the emotional body and how things can be stored in the body. And so it's no surprise that played a big role. And so as I was healing through this energy work and finding a lot of these blockages, finding a lot of these things that I was holding on to, a lot of the dysfunction in the physical, mental, and emotional body, that allowed me different strategies to heal more in the just physical world and more stereotypical way that we think about healing. But also it accelerated my ability to heal and regulate my nervous system, which plays a really big role in our ability to stay healed, plays a really big role in cortisol levels, and being able to manage stress and being able to sleep and managing like mental health issues like anxiety and depression. And all of that plays such a big role in the healing journey. So when we think about, well, who is energy work for? I mean, really, who is it not for? Who does not want to benefit from better mood, better energy, better sleep, a more relaxed demeanor, feeling this internal feeling of being relaxed, of not being on all the time, of being overstimulated in a very overstimulated world, an overstressed world. And so energy work can be done for anyone. It can also be done in person. It could also be done via distance, which is mostly how I do it. You do not have to be there with the person to do the energy work. Energy doesn't know time or space. So technically speaking, you can send energy to the past, to the present, to the future, across the world, to someone right in front of you. It doesn't really matter.
That's interesting. I like that quote or statement that you said. Energy doesn't know time or distance. That's crazy. I love it. Now you mentioned the nervous system. I, having taken anatomy, I kind of understand the nervous system, but maybe some people here have no idea what the nervous system is. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so the nervous system is literally a system inside the body, and it has a lot to do with when it's overstimulated or turned on. I almost compare it to like a bug zapper, where it has this like low level, like, it's that buzzing, the lights on, just like that constant little hum. That's what your nervous system ends up being like. And it feels like being overstressed, being overstimulated, having those looping, running thoughts running through your brain, your body feeling really restless, and just like, it's at night, you're tired, you should be asleep, and your body's like just almost like turned on a little bit and not in that very rested state. And so that's kind of how I like to describe the nervous system and what it feels like when it's not regulated. And then when it's regulated, you should feel very relaxed, very calm. We all experience stress, and you should be able to handle stress. But after that immediate stressor's over, you should be able to come down. You should have no trouble sleeping. You should be able to feel relaxed and calm and let go of these things that can turn or light us on this like stress system.
Yeah. Now, is it mainly related to stress, or is the nervous system related to other things as well?
I mean, it can be really related to absolutely other things as well. But when I think about, and I define stress as many things. This could be internal stress. This could be food stress. This could be workout stress, which is a good stress, but too much of it, not good. If we're eating a bunch of sugar, this can turn on the nervous system because that's pretty stressful on the body. If we're eating on the go, that can turn on our nervous system, and we're in a sympathetic or unrested state versus we want to be the opposite, a parasympathetic rested state when we eat. So yeah, it can certainly relate to things, and stress is very broad spectrum, the way I'm using it.
Yeah. You mentioned sympathetic and parasympathetic. Can you define those for us?
Yeah. So parasympathetic is the rested state. It's calm, it's relaxed. It's just calm and relaxed. And it's, when we think of like when we go to bed, we should be in a calm, relaxed state. It doesn't mean you're necessarily tired, but just relaxed. And then when we think of sympathetic state, it's the stress state. You're probably releasing cortisol, you're on the move, maybe adrenaline's being released, but you're in motion, you're active. And when we think like way back in the day, these systems are both super important. And when we were being chased by a predator, like way back, our sympathetic system would turn on. We'd have a rush of adrenaline and cortisol. We'd be running away from something. Certain things shut down. Hormone production isn't going to be great in that moment. Digestion's not going to be great in that moment because that's not what we need. You're not going to, while you're being chased, you're not going to stop and eat some food and try and digest that. That's probably not a great idea. You're probably going to be eaten or attacked here. And then once this immediate stressor is over, you should go back into a rested state, which would be the parasympathetic state, because you're no longer being actively stressed or chased or threatened.
Yeah. So in all of your work with the nervous system, do you find that there's a certain group of people or type of person that has more issues with this kind of dysregulation of the nervous system?
Yeah, I'd say almost all women.
Oh,
Yeah, if we think about like nervous system and cortisol issues, cortisol dysregulation, I mean, definitely women tend to be more prone to this. And at least, I mean, obviously in my practice, I'm a little biased in who I see because I'm talking to mostly people who are very chronically stressed, but definitely I'd say more women than men, but certainly men can be very much stuck in this state. But, if you really common signs, like if you have trouble falling asleep, if you have trouble staying asleep, if you have trouble just like sitting in a room by yourself in silence for 5 minutes, just like being with yourself, probably got some stuff going on, probably not in the best state. But anyone, it's so hard nowadays. There's so many stressors. And we're, as a society, just so stuck in a state of always doing and always being and achieving more and doing more. And so we're just more prone to this nervous system dysregulation as a result of that, because we really don't take the time to relax, to decompress, to have a mindfulness practice, and to really take care of ourselves like we probably should.
you mentioned a couple perhaps symptoms of nervous system dysregulation, unable to fall asleep, kind of like I feel like it's like the inability to turn off your brain.
Yes.
But are there any other symptoms that would indicate that somebody might have a nervous system dysregulation?
Yeah, so sleep is a big one. Having trouble turning your brain off if you have a lot of the looping thoughts. Most people with anxiety also have a dysregulated nervous system. If you tend to be tired throughout the day and then wake up at night, pretty common one. Sometimes the dips and spikes in energies, that can certainly be blood sugar related, but sometimes that can also be very much triggered by nervous system dysregulation. If you have normal stressors, if someone, let's say at work, brings up an argument or disagrees with you about something, and it shouldn't be a crazy big deal, and you just can't let it go, that's a pretty common sign, because your nervous system is just turned on, and can't turn off. Hormone imbalances, digestive issues are two really big ones. Once again, if we think way back in the day, if we're being chased by something and we're in this immediate state of sympathetic, of stress state for survival, which is what our body is supposed to do, we're not trying to reproduce in that moment. We're not trying to stop and eat food. And when we're stuck in this chronic state of this, because we don't have the same type of stressors we did, and we have this really chronic state of stress, a lot of times we end up with a lot of hormone imbalances. Certainly fertility issues can be a really big one. And then certainly all kinds of gut issues. It plays a really, really big role in the gut and digestion.
Okay, I'm like starting to piece things together. That's like, okay, that's awesome. Well, not awesome that people experience that, but
Yeah.
awesome that we've identified that, hey, this could be an issue and this is the reason behind it.
Yeah.
We have hit a little bit on trauma. Okay, like trauma being what dysregulates the system. Is that kind of, tell us a little bit more about trauma and how that's connected to the nervous system dysregulation.
Yeah, so a lot of parts to this. So I'm going to start with the two main types of trauma, like big trauma that we think of. We think of like capital T trauma, is the way I like to say it. And these are the most classic things that we think of: trauma, abuse, physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse. We think of, like when we think about childhood trauma, having an absent parent, having someone die, having someone go to prison. If you look at the ACEs test, a lot of these are big capital T traumas. And these are the very, like, when you think of an event happening, you're like, whew, that is a traumatic event, a big accident of some sort. I mean, all of these things are very big, very more stereotypical classic traumas. But then we also have lowercase t traumas, which are just as impactful, but in a very different way oftentimes, and oftentimes not quite so obvious. So when we think about childhood trauma, when I talk to someone and they're like, I don't have childhood trauma, I had a great childhood. One of my favorite questions to ask is, when you were young, did you feel like you fit in? Did you feel like you fit in with your friends? Did you feel like you fit in with your family? And did you outwardly feel that connectedness and love most of your childhood? And that's what kind of starts to trigger some people and be like, oh, I felt like kind of a misfit. Like I didn't have a ton of like a big group of friends, or I wasn't in like the quote unquote popular crowd. And, and we think of these things, and that's a lowercase t trauma. And that's a big deal. And we develop certain patterns as a result of this. Another really classic one is caring for other people, which at the root of this is an amazing thing. If you're caring for other people, let's say you're the oldest sibling and you help take care of your younger siblings, like amazing, that's great. That probably was very rewarding for you. But now as an adult, do you continue with that pattern? Do you care for everyone else except yourself? Do you take the time to care for yourself, to fuel your body, to eat the way you should, to move the way you should, to do nice things for yourself? Go get your hair done, go get a massage, like go take a walk in the park. Do you do these things, or do you just care for everyone else and run yourself into the ground? And these are very classic trauma patterns that aren't quite so obvious, and a lot of times had great intention, especially through childhood. But at the same time, they don't always fully serve us as adults. And our brain starts to develop into these trauma patterns, into these programs that help us survive and helped us function when we were young or adulthood, or if we had to survive in a certain type of relationship that maybe wasn't the healthiest. Maybe we had some not the nicest person that we were with and told us that maybe we can't do certain things, or we weren't good enough to do certain things. And then our brain starts to really believe that, and we develop this new program of, maybe we aren't good enough. And then we have a lot of self-doubt, a lot of imposter syndrome, and a lot of fear of putting ourselves out there or doing something new because we might fail. And we have this little voice in the back of our head that's this old program of, I can't do it. I've been told that for so long, like I can't do it, so I'm not going to do this. And it's a protection mechanism. Our brain is supposed to do this. But if we're unaware, this can really limit us, and this can inhibit our healing. This can inhibit having a great relationships with ourselves and certainly with other people, which is not great. That's not what we want, to be super happy and to thrive as a human being. And so that's kind of trauma at the most basic level.
You talk a lot about like childhood trauma and how it impacts us as an adult. Is that really the precursor for the issues that we're experiencing now, or could people experience trauma as an adult and have issues?
Yeah, it certainly can be both, but the studies are clear that childhood trauma is very, very impactful. And really, it's childhood trauma defined as 18 or younger. However, we also know that the brain is not fully developed until we're about 24 to 26. So especially trauma up until that time plays a really, really big role. And those patterns tend to be very hard to change. Now, this does not discount adult trauma by any means. We can absolutely develop new trauma patterns and have traumatic situations and go through traumas that change us and change our programming as adults. But at the same time, a lot of our original programming is done before the age of 18, and even really before the age of like 7 or 8. So when someone experiences very early childhood trauma, especially in these formative years, before the age of 18, These patterns tend to be stronger. These patterns tend to be a little bit more prominent. We also know from research that it can lead to immune issues. We know our immune system is very much impacted by childhood trauma. If you score, I believe it's an ACE score of 2 or higher, you are much more likely to develop an autoimmune condition. If you have an ACE score of, I think it's either 5 or 6 or higher, you're 80% more likely to develop an autoimmune condition, which is crazy. I mean, that is a crazy, crazy stat. We also know our CRP levels are like one of the main inflammation markers is going to be systemically higher in people who experience childhood trauma. These are things that are well researched and well documented at this point. So we know that childhood trauma has a very, very, very big impact on our health, on trauma, on the way our programming is, but also on the physical body itself. And there are physical repercussions that happen as a result of purely childhood trauma, let alone, obviously anything else that can happen. So people who have chronic health issues, there's probably a pretty good chance that some childhood trauma stuff is playing at least a little bit of a role in your issues and your symptoms. And therefore, we probably need to address some of that in the healing process.
Out of maybe this, it's purely on my curiosity. If somebody, you have 5 children that grow up with an absent father, are they going to experience the same things later in life if they all experience an absent father, or does it manifest differently as an adult?
It really depends on the person. I mean, it depends on what else is going on. Like I had an absent father growing up, but I also had an alcoholic single mom. And so that certainly plays a role. I have other friends who are very much in this space who have an absent father. And it's different, not terribly different, but certainly a little different here. And certainly other life circumstances can play a really big role. And often I'll say from personal experience and working with clients, I have no science to back this up, but a lot of times growing up, specifically if we talk about like an absent father, there's a lot of issues with balancing of the masculine and the feminine energies inside the body. And that can lead to dysfunction as well. Specifically, hormone imbalances are really common when we have a lot of imbalances with the masculine and the feminine. If someone tends to be more in the masculine, we can see testosterone levels can sometimes be higher, seemingly for no other reason other than some of these issues. And I'll say, I've done some experimentation myself with this, so I could say this from personal experience, that this has been an issue for me, and this is something that I've spent a lot of time this year specifically working on, and I've been able to balance some of my hormones just through balancing energies in the masculine and the feminine a little bit better.
That's neat.
Yeah,
that's so cool. Awesome. Now, we have perhaps somebody who has had trauma in the past and they're experiencing all these issues as an adult. Tell us a little bit about the healing of this trauma.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to do this. There is definitely no one right path. Everyone is different. And I always encourage someone, if you are going through this process or you want to start this process, try out a few different modalities because everyone does respond a little bit different. We're going to dive deep into a few of these different modalities. I have a lot of experience with a lot of these. But everyone is different. Everyone responds differently. And sometimes it's changing throughout your journey as well, which I will talk about in my own experience. So, a few of the really big ones, certainly trauma therapy. Trauma therapy is great. There's a lot of modalities in trauma therapy. I will say trauma therapists are trained differently than regular therapists. So if you're seeing just a regular therapist, I'm not saying they're not beneficial because they can be massively beneficial, but at the same time, they're usually, unless they have additional training, not trained in trauma specifically. And there is a very big difference. And we know that just talking about your problems, we're using the logic center of our brain, which is great. And that's more traditional therapy. But these other trauma patterns are stored in different parts of the brain. It's also stored in the body that a lot of regular talk therapy does not touch. This kind of these other parts of the brain does not touch the body. And so it's often not the most helpful when it comes to changing specific trauma patterns. Trauma therapy, great. They're very well trained in how to do this. If we think about the body specifically, somatic experiencing or working with a somatic therapist can be very, very beneficial. They work on getting trauma out of the body, and there's a lot of different modalities to do this. I'm certainly a big fan, like one like kind of specialty, I think, underneath somatic experiencing, trauma releasing exercises, TRE. Super great, super beneficial. It's a very strategic types of shaking designed to help the trauma physically get out of the body. It is one that we recommend very often in our practice. We're big fans of that one, although there are a variety of other somatic techniques. Shaking is a really good one. Anything to move the body. If we even think, really basic, if you have emotions come up, moving and dancing is a way to get out some of these. And just like that can be very helpful in just releasing things out of your body, releasing emotions out of your body so they don't get stuck in our body, which can make us sick. We also have things like hypnosis. Hypnosis works with the subconscious to alter subconscious patterns. Make sure you work with someone very well trained in this. I've worked with a couple therapists on this, and there was definitely some I resonated more with than others, and different ways to do hypnosis. But it can be a very, very valuable technique. Once again, we're working on not just the logic center of the brain, but really the subconscious to change these patterns. We can also do things like energy healing. Energy healing works to, once again, we're rebalancing the body. We can work with the chakras. Specifically, we can work with different energetic parts of the body. And once again, if we think about different emotions being stored in the body, liver, anger, and resentment, the lungs are known to carry grief and sadness. So we can work specifically around that and put extra focus on that. If we think about also the chakras, chakras do different things. If we think about something like the throat chakra, I don't think I've ever met anyone who has thyroid issues who doesn't have throat chakra issues. And it's no surprise here because the thyroid is right around the throat. If you have trouble fully expressing yourself, of speaking your truth, of sharing your emotions, and speaking up for yourself and setting really good and strong and clear boundaries, probably have something going on with your throat chakra, which can definitely lead to physical symptoms, specifically with the throat chakra, thyroid dysfunction. So there's a lot of connections here with the physical and energetic and emotional parts of the body and that kind of thing. And then this is newer and certainly not legal completely everywhere yet, but psychedelic assisted therapy. Ketamine is very much legal, and that is in that world. Certain places, psilocybin and MDMA specifically are being pretty well researched at this point, and the results are pretty darn incredible. And I'll say I have personal experience with this. I am a massive fan. Especially if you've already done some work around this, you want to go a little bit deeper, this is an amazing tool. Given the right environment and setting and practitioner you are working with, this can be a great resource and tool as well.
That's awesome. Now you mentioned a couple different areas. I'm curious if you are able to share more. You mentioned the thyroid and how that impacts, the speak. You talked about the lungs. You talked about the liver, holding anger. Are there other areas that are connected to various things like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we have all kinds of ones. So if we think about, there's, depending on who you talk to, seven-ish main chakras in the body. And these are something that we very much work with in the energy world. Starting at the base of your spine, we have your root chakra. Up like under your belly button is your sacral chakra. We have up above your belly button, under your rib cage, your solar plexus. your heart chakra, exactly where you think it would be, your throat chakra, your third eye chakra, and then your crown chakra. And a lot of imbalances within the chakras can lead to physical symptoms. If someone comes to us with certain physical symptoms, once again, thyroid issues, throat chakra. One of my favorite ones is procrastination, since that is so common. Probably got some issues with the solar plexus going on. Yeah. So, each chakra kind of holds different things. And if people come to us with different things, if someone comes to me with a lot of procrastination issues and a lot of gut issues, we probably got some pretty serious solar plexus stuff going on. Hormone imbalances. So someone has a lot of issues with hormone imbalances. We probably got some sacral chakra work that we need to work on. A lot of anxiety, a lot of like those looping thoughts in your head. A lot of this is root chakra related or something with our lower chakras, the sacral, solar plexus, and or root, because we're very much in our head instead of being in our body, which is, we want to be in our body, we want to be grounded, which helps us be more energetically and physically secure. And so a lot of times a lot of issues with the lower parts of the chakras.
Why don't doctors like talk about this and encourage this?
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot. And I have medical professionals in my family, I will say that. So, I hear the other side of this a lot. And, I have a lot of respect for Western medicine. I think, thank God for Western medicine. But at the same time, the way most Western medicine practitioners are trained is you have a list of symptoms, you have labs that go along with those symptoms, and you check these boxes off, and then you get this pill. And that's really what it does, by and large. Certainly like surgery is different, but the average medical professional, I mean, that's kind of how they're trained and how to do this and how to quote unquote heal. Looking at blood work and being trained in blood work and other functional labs, we just look at things differently. We're not looking for boxes to check off. We're looking at each individual marker, but at the same time, we got to put it all together and understand, what is the body really trying to tell us? And for me, I look at blood work. What are your symptoms trying to tell us? Oh, based on what you're eating right now, what is that telling us? Based on your movement patterns and lifestyle, what is that telling us? But also, what are your trauma patterns and what is your energetic body trying to tell us too? Because it all tells a story. And it's my opinion that all of these things matter. It's not just what you eat. It's not just how you move. It's not just your lifestyle. It's all of these things together and working. Not that you're ever done healing from a lot of like emotional trauma and stuff, but you can get to a certain place where you're in a really good spot and your nervous system is regulated and you're working through these patterns, and you're never going to be perfect. And that's not the goal, but it's to be in a place that you're healed enough that your body feels really stable. Your body feels safe. And plays a really big role in long-term health. And our brain health and our physical health, and all that kind of stuff. And just Western medicine doesn't teach this. If we look at Eastern medicine a little bit more, obviously they do work with a lot of that stuff. If you go to an acupuncturist, they're looking for a lot of these blockages that apply to the emotional body, that apply to the physical body. And it's, really very much along the same lines. And it's a more ancient way to look at healing and how dysfunction can show up in the body and how we can support that dysfunction so it's no longer dysfunction, but regular function and healing.
Right. I feel like the Western medicine is more of, okay, hey, let's manage your symptoms. Here's a pill. Whereas what you're talking about, like your bio said, really looking at getting to the root cause and solving that so you don't need the pill.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes we can get off the pill, sometimes we can't. And once again, like, thank God for Western medicine. But at the same time, if you have chronic issues, which is who I specifically work with, Western medicine doesn't do a lot. They can certainly give you a lot of pills to manage some symptoms, but they're not really looking any further. And they often do, I run very different testing a lot of times for a lot of people. But once again, it's also looking at the nervous system. It's looking at these trauma patterns. It's the way their brain was programmed. And, just as someone who experienced chronic pain and chronic illness, you get to a point when you go through a lot of this that, doctors tell you, this is in your head. You're crazy. You've got anxiety. We've got a pill for that, so we can help you. Don't worry. But that's it. And we know that that's not the case, that there are other reasons for people to have chronic pain, to have chronic illness and chronic issues that Western medicine sometimes just can't explain. And yeah, the brain plays a really big role in this. And yeah, some of it might be in your brain. And people can get really attached to a diagnosis. People can get really attached to their symptoms and feeling sick. And that can develop into a certain type of brain pattern. But we can also undo that and reverse a lot of that. So we're no longer stuck in those patterns.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of the rewiring or kind of reprogramming, I guess, of our brain when it comes to trauma or everything? I guess it's all related.
Yeah. You can retrain your brain out of just about anything. If you love candy and don't want to eat candy all the time, you can train your brain out of that. But certainly when we think about this more stereotypically, we think about, getting out of certain trauma patterns or certain types of no longer serving patterns that as adults, they're just not serving us. So when we think about this, we have to really think about the subconscious mind. So it's really what I call the default programming. Once again, if we think about stereotypical trauma patterns, if someone, when they get into an argument or an argument starts or someone yells at them, they immediately shut down, stop talking. Maybe they start to cry and just want to remove themselves out of the situation. So we know that this is classically defined as a fawning trauma pattern. And so if we think about this pattern, we can train ourselves out of this. And we have to it's easiest if we kind of figure out where this first started. What happened? When did you first start fearing yelling, fearing conflict, or hearing that conflict or arguing or disagreeing, even healthy disagreeing, was bad? When did that kind of start? Most likely in childhood, not discounting other things that can happen, but for most people, it started in childhood at some point. And so now we know that that's our pattern. So if we want to change that pattern, we have to change our subconscious default programming that says conflict is bad. Conflict means we are unsafe. And so we shut down and we back off. So when we think about this pattern, there's kind of three main parts when we think of very stereotypical brain retraining. One, what is the pattern we want to change and what do we want to change it to? For me, this was a personal pattern of mine. And so when I first started reprogramming, the message I told myself was, I love conflict. I love disagreement. It feels so good to share my opinion, even though it does not agree with everyone around me. And so we have this, all right, what's the goal? What do I want to retrain? If I were to retrain this pattern, how would that make me feel? How would I feel during this situation? Would I feel safe? Would I feel very comfortable? Would I feel very expressive? This is largely dependent on the person, but how would it make me feel? If you fear conflict, you probably want to feel safe. That's probably a pretty good choice in this example in particular. So we want to feel safe. Step number 3, when was a time that you felt really safe? And how can we connect and feel this sense of safety, knowing this new pattern we want to change to? I love conflict. It makes me feel safe. When was a time that I previously felt really safe? And if we connect that, that starts to change our subconscious brain and our subconscious programming into a new program. Now, our default programming is pretty good and pretty strong. So this not an overnight process. If you do this once, it will not change. This is about doing this over time and consistently. I tell people to try to start doing this once a day, work up to multiple times a day. At my peak, I was doing these things like 5 or 6 times a day. Doesn't take a terribly long time, 3 to 6 minutes throughout the day, just so you're constantly reinforcing this new program. The other thing you can kind of do within this, certainly we can go through this 3-step, very traditional process, but really we can just continuously regulate our nervous system. And we can think, all right, conflict is safe. I love conflict. I love conflict. Why don't you go outside and breathe fresh air without your phone for a few minutes and just focus on deep breathing, on enjoying yourself outside. If it's nice outside, go call a friend, call a loved one that you feel really safe with, that you have a great relationship with, go snuggle with your pet. My dog has been very helpful in this healing process. He is adorable and a great snuggle buddy and a great way to reset your nervous system and feel super safe. Listen to music, listen to your favorite song, something that makes you feel really good. Dance for 3 minutes, sing your favorite song for 3 minutes, just something that helps you feel really good and kind of gets you out of the day-to-day stressors and kind of patterns that you're used to. The other thing that can really help as you're going through this process is continuously working on your subconscious mind and increase your neuroplasticity. Our brain has the ability to change if given the right circumstances. So going through this pattern in this process, super helpful. If we can also challenge the brain in other ways and increase this neuroplasticity, that can also help. Learning new things, reading about new things, doing things out of your normal routine. If you usually brush your teeth with your right hand, brush them with your left. Something as simple as that. If you go to the same way to work every day, try a different way. Just anything that's going to make your brain think just a little bit extra. This is going to increase your neuroplasticity and increase the chances that you're going to be able to start to change these patterns. And you can also use these as tools to do this faster than if you aren't.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm told we might have a short meditation that we can do to kind of help. Well, we're not, like you said, we're not going to change our entire life in 2 minutes. But we get to experience a little bit of maybe what you're talking about when it comes to maybe rewiring or just calming the nervous system, whatever it is that maybe you have in store for us. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll have time for Q&A. So if people have questions, you can, if you've been writing them down, go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll hold on to those. If we have time at the end, we'll be sure to cover some of those. But yeah, go ahead and tell us a little bit about this meditation you have.
Okay, yeah, so this is one of my favorite ones, and I will say this is certainly a fan favorite among clients and people I do some of the energy work with, and we always start with the grounding meditation, and this is a really good one to do, especially at the end of the day, to just help you relax, reset, recenter, and really prepare for a more relaxing and restful evening. Also super good before bed. And yeah, that's all I'll say about it until we get into it.
Awesome. Well, I think we're ready whenever you are.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So get comfortable. You can lay down, you can sit, you can stay standing if you feel really inclined to. And I'm going to have you start by just closing your eyes. And we're going to start by taking a couple big deep breaths. So you're going to start by taking a big inhale through your nose, big exhale out through your mouth. Another big inhale through your nose. And big exhale out through your mouth. We're going to do one more and big inhale through your nose and hold. And as you go to exhale, I want you to exhale as slowly as you can. And I want you to just take a moment and start to notice your body. Notice anywhere where you might be carrying some tension. Maybe it's in your forehead. Maybe you're carrying some tension around your eyes or the space behind your eyes. Maybe you feel some tension in your jaw or your neck. Maybe in the top of your shoulders or your back. It's through your hands or your fingers. Maybe it's through your belly. Maybe you've just been holding in your belly all day long. Maybe you're carrying tension through your hips or your legs, maybe into your toes. I just want you to notice this tension. And on your next inhale, I want you to take a big inhale into the parts of your body where you're carrying tension. And on the exhale, I want you to imagine this tension flowing out through your body, just like it turns to water, flowing out through the bottom of your feet, out of your body, and no longer holding on to it. I want you to imagine your body is made up of all kinds of small, little, tiny puzzle pieces. Just hundreds and thousands of little, tiny puzzle pieces all come together to make you whole. And throughout our day and weeks and years, we either willingly or unwillingly give parts of ourselves away to people. And right now, we're going to call back all of these pieces that you've given away, either willingly or unwillingly, back to your body to make you whole again. Imagine all of these little tiny pieces coming back and finding their perfect spot on your body. And as different parts of your body start to become whole again, you start to emulate a white light. And this white light is very warm, it's a healing light. It feels very relaxing. Continue to call back all of these pieces of yourself you've given away willingly and unwillingly. And as all of these pieces start to come together, this white, warm, healing light gets brighter and brighter and starts to fill your entire body until all the pieces are back and your entire body is filled with this white, warm, healing light, just radiating throughout your entire body. I want you to just take a moment and enjoy this feeling of wholeness, feeling complete, feeling relaxed. And at any time you get stressed, now and in the future, just imagine you can always come back to this place where you are whole, healed, and full of this white, warm, healing light. And in just a moment, we're going to come back into your physical body, into the world. But remember, you can always come back to this place. We're going to come back in 3, 2. Take a big inhale through your nose. And as you exhale, you can slowly open your eyes. And welcome back. Yeah.
I feel like I just got a massage.
I know, right? It's one of my favorite ones. And I can, I go through it and I don't actually do it, but I always feel so warm and calm after. I can feel like I get all tingly. Just it's one of my favorite ones.
Right. I love it. Awesome. Awesome. Well, we do have a question. We mentioned a lot of childhood trauma and maybe some of the stereotypical capital T traumas. If someone is raising a child with an absent parent or knows that, okay, this child has had trauma, is there any way for them to be proactive when it comes to preventing issues later on in life?
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, I'll say, so I am not a parent. I have a lot of friends who are parents. I have a lot of clients who are parents. but I don't say this as a parent myself because I am not one. It's never about being the perfect parent, because I don't think there is ever such thing. I don't think anyone grows up and has zero trauma, even with the best of intentions. And I think one of the biggest recommendations I can give is teach your child how to feel their emotions, how to understand and identify their emotions, and then also how to release their emotions. And this plays such a big role because there can be a lot of feelings around an absent parent about certain things that you have no control over as a parent. But teaching your child that it is okay to feel all of the things, to fully be able to express themselves in a very safe environment, and to let these feelings come out however they would like to, whether that's anger, hitting a pillow, screaming in the right environment, dancing it out, singing it out, crying, whatever it is. I think that's one of the most valuable lessons that someone can teach their child when it comes to trauma healing and developing a really healthy relationship with these emotions. Because before we can do any trauma work, we really have to do that kind of work. And most of us aren't taught how to do this. And so if someone is taught how to do this, man, do they have a huge leg up on just their entire lives, but also in just the general healing process.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I know we're getting a little short on time here. So before we get in, and if anybody posts any other questions, if people are watching the replay or think of a question later, where can they find you? How can they get in touch with you to answer? I mean, people can send me questions. I'm just going to forward them on to you, but where can people find you?
Yeah, so my business name is Trifecta Collective. We have a whole practice, and we are on just about everything. So we are very, very active on TikTok, very active on Instagram. We're on Threads as well. Facebook, we have a private Facebook group, Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root. Our website, trifectacollective.net. We're also on YouTube as well.
Oh my gosh, everywhere.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I have a team, so it's very much helpful.
If they were to send a message, is there an email, or do you prefer Messenger?
It is total. We are available across all platforms. If you message us on anything, you can certainly message us at info@trifectacollective.net. There's also a contact form on our website. Our email address is pretty widespread across the board on all social media platforms, but we're very, very responsive via DM as well, whether that's on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, anything like that.
Awesome. Awesome. As we kind of wrap up here, do you have any words of wisdom, any final thoughts? If people were to walk away from this webinar with one thing here in the forefront of their mind, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say learn how to relax. And that's way easier said than done. But if you can learn how to relax at the end of the day, have a good night's sleep, wake up, not feel this urgent sense of anxiety and stress right off the bat, and have some sort of practice where you're able to relax for a minute and not be in this chronic state of stress, of a dysregulated nervous system, in this sympathetic state, that will serve you across the board in your body, in your physical health, mental health, emotional health, and in all of your relationships, in my opinion.
For sure. I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you, Megan, for spending your hour with us and sharing so much information. I tried to take notes, but like I told you, I'm going to have to go back and watch this to get multiple things that I missed. I just know it. Thank you again. And for all those that are watching, give Megan a big old round of applause. Thank you in the comments. And we will see you next time for our September one.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It was so great to be here.
Awesome. Awesome.